I have another guest with me, which is Mackenzie, who is actually already on site here at Capernwray Hall. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hello.
So just tell us a little bit about what it is that you're doing, because you're not here because of Operation Mobilisation. You're here because of Capernwray Hall, where this event is hosted. So what is it you're doing here?
So I am a volunteer at Capernwray, and I am here because I was a student last year. And after I was a student, I moved to London to do a university degree in public history. And at my university, for the master's, you can either do a thesis or do a professional project for the qualification. And I decided to do the professional project instead of the thesis. And so for the project, you have to do it at a historic site. And I am familiar with Capernwray because I was a student last year. And when I was a student, I became aware of archives that they have here, but I also became aware of the fact that they don't have anyone on site to do anything with them. So I knew there was a bit of a gap. So I contacted Capernwray and I said, would you like someone to come and do something with them, someone who has time and an interest? And they said yes. So I worked it out with my uni and with Capernwray, and it all worked out for me to come and do my professional project here. So I'm getting the qualification for my master's degree as well as doing volunteer work for Capernwray.
So you said you were here as a student. What brought you here? We'll come back to your accent in a second, but what brought you to this particular Bible college? Is it a Bible college? Have I got that right?
It is, yes. Yeah. There are 25 of them all around the world. So this was the original one, and it's the largest one as well. And I came to this one, mostly because I just wanted to live in England. I've always wanted to live in England. I don't know why. I've always had a fascination with it. And my family started coming to England on vacation in about 2012, 2013. So I was about 13, 14 years old. And my whole family fell in love with the UK, and we just kept coming back. So it felt very natural and easy to just come back for Bible school.
You see, no, I wondered whether it was because we're about as near to America in the UK as you can get before your feet get wet.
No, no, that didn't cross my mind at all.
And now it has, you see. Andy B's helping. Right, so let's go back to your accent, because when I first met you a while ago, you said, what's your accent? And I said, American, but I wasn't sure. And I didn't do a very good job of working out you're from Canada. And yet, talking to you now, as you talk about some of your home life, your Canadian accent's coming out stronger. So where about in Canada are you from? Because I know we've got listeners from there.
So I'm from Manitoba, and Manitoba is right in the middle of Canada.
So smack in the middle. Is this, because I really don't know enough, but I think of Canada as lots of trees and the odd little house, which is probably not quite real. So what's Manitoba? Manitoba. So is that a city? Is that a town? How many people live there?
So Manitoba is a province. And so there are 1.3 million people in the province of Manitoba. Our capital city is Winnipeg, and Winnipeg has 700,000 people. So most people in Manitoba live in Winnipeg. But I live in a small town just south of Winnipeg, and it has about 12,000 people.
Okay, you see, this is my. I won't say online that I did geography at school, because that wouldn't help. But I have heard of Winnipeg, so maybe something in my 4 years of studying geography at A level and GCSE, maybe some of it sunk in. How have you found acclimatizing to the UK? The one thing I don't know about, I know America better for this. What's the weather difference like? Because here it's wet. Right. Is this your past?
No. So first of all, just to clarify, we use Celsius in Canada. Everyone always thinks we use Fahrenheit, but that's just the States. So in the summertime, actually, where I live, it gets quite hot, and it can get to 40, but that's usually with the humidity. It's usually about 30-ish, high 20s, low 30s in the summertime. But in the winter, it's very cold. So where I live, we get both extremes, and it gets to minus 50 or below minus 50. The coolest I've experienced is minus 57, but it's usually around minus 30 in the wintertime.
You see, now I understand that, because I was brought up in a generation of pints and miles and degrees Celsius and centigrade. So I'm a mixed up kid, because I don't understand Fahrenheit, but I understand miles and pints, which makes things interesting. So you get much greater extremes of weather, which I thought about the cold. I would never think of Canada as a hot place.
It's very hot in the summer. I mean, not everywhere. I live very, very far in the south. I only live 15 minutes north of the U.S. border, a 15-minute drive. But, I mean, in the northern part of Canada, it does not get that hot. And on the coasts, it wouldn't get as hot either. But since I'm right in the middle, we get both extremes.
I got a friend in Montana, which isn't very far.
Oh,
And occasionally some of our family have had to be involved in helicopter rescue, so they do sometimes have to cross the border, and because obviously it's not a very straight line, is it? So sometimes they do have to go and help and rescue folks. So what have you enjoyed most? You said that you fell in love with the UK. What is it that you came across and you thought, we like this about the UK?
That's a good question. I think as North Americans, we all come from somewhere. It's Canada and the US are just countries of immigrants, which I guess largely most countries are now. But in Canada, it's a lot newer. And so it's kind of always like, where are you from? What is your heritage? And mine is mainly British. On my mom's side, it's Norwegian and Ukrainian. But my dad's side, it's all British. And so we came as kids with our parents to kind of go back and see our roots, where we came from. So we saw my great, 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 great grandfather's grave in Northern Ireland. And we saw the farm where my great, 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 great grandfather lived in Scotland. And yeah, along the way, we just also came to England and saw a lot of the UK. And so we really liked the charm of the countryside, but also the history for us personally. But also, I've always just liked history. And there's so much history here. You can see so much of it, like a building from the 1000s that just doesn't exist in Canada at all. An old building in Canada is from the early 1900s, and that's old. But here, you can read about things that happened 500 years ago, and then you can go and see where it actually happened and see things that the people who were there at the time would have seen as well. And that's just unheard of for the most part in North America. So it's just mind blowing to me. And so to be able to come and live in a place like that is a huge, huge privilege for someone who loves history as well.
I sent a photo of a house from the mid 1600s, mid 17th century to my friend in Montana, who said, I'm not sure we've got anything that old over here, so many hundreds of years old, because it would make sense, though, for me that you enjoy coming here, because it's part of who you were, which comes into your love of history and your passion for that. But it also feeds, I guess, into what you're doing for Capernwray Hall here, looking at the archives. So just tell us a little bit, what is it you're actually doing, and how far back does Capernwray Hall go back as a Bible college?
So as a Bible college, it goes back to 1949. It started as a holiday center, though, and that opened in 1947. Yeah, 1947. And but the heritage of the area goes back to 1066, really, which is what I've kind of researched it back to, because the house that we operate out of used to be the home of an MP for Lancashire. And so his family history goes back to 1066 because their predecessor came in with William the Conqueror. So that's why it goes back that far. But more recently, it goes back to 1946 when the house was bought by Major and Mrs. Ian Thomas, because the Martin family, who was living here, fell into financial trouble during the 1930s, moved away before the Second World War, and then during the war, actually, it was a home or it operated as the high school, the Ripley High School in Lancaster. They evacuated to here. And then after the war finished, all the students moved out, and then the whole estate really was up for sale. And the estate is more than just this home. It was many, lots of the surrounding area. And so it was split up into smaller sections and then put up for auction. And Major Ian Thomas had the desire from God to find an old home somewhere in the country. He didn't care where. And while he was in Germany during the war, he saw an ad for Capernwray Hall and in a magazine that someone had just happened to, there are a lot of God moments, like coincidences, which are not coincidences, or like just happenings, totally illustrated by God throughout this entire story. And so Major Ian Thomas saw the ad, was not able to get back to England to go to the auction, but told his wife that she needed to go. And so she and a friend who was good at finance, both of them came up to visit, and they went to the auction in Lancaster, and they bought it for £7,350 on September 11th, 1946. And then they got straight to work and they hosted their first holiday in May 1947. And so, I mean, the place needed so much work, and there was only a few of them to do the work. And Major Ian Thomas was back and forth between here and Germany at the time because he wasn't quite finished his work for the war. And yeah, that's where it started. I was a holiday center for 2 years, and then someone who was on staff, he was called Mr. Van Doren. He saw the need to extend the learning time. He thought people didn't have enough time to really digest things, or people just needed more training. So he suggested that they open it as a Bible school from September, October-ish until June, or it was originally till March, and then they added the spring semester later, and then operates as a holiday center throughout the summer and at Christmas. Not anymore. It did at the time. It is still a holiday center at New Year and some weekends throughout the year, Easter, things like that.
So there's some amazing Christian history into why this even is a place at all. And obviously we're here because it's a big centre that they can have lots of people come and sleep and all. So what are the things that you found that you just think, wow, that is so amazing that I've discovered this about the history of, as you're going through the archive? I mean, you must be reading loads of documents. Yeah. What are some of the sort of the things you think, wow, that's so amazing?
Wow, there are actually so many, and I come across more almost every day. But I think the thing that stood out to me most is how prayerful and faithful Major and Mrs. Ian Thomas were throughout this entire journey of their ministry. So Major Ian Thomas was so obedient to what God had for his life, and he just wanted to be all in. And so he did everything so prayerfully, which is something that I learned as a student here as well. There's so much prayer here, and I knew that as a Christian growing up. It's like, oh yeah, we pray, but I didn't think about praying that much. And as a student, I learned how important it was. And now going through and reading about the history of it as well, and seeing how prayerful things have been done throughout the entirety of its existence, is just a constant reminder to me of how important it is to have a constant relationship with Christ. Because when you do things prayerfully, God is always going to be involved. And when he's involved, obviously things are going to go in more accordance to his plan, which is obviously what we strive for. And because he was so prayerful and faithful, he and his wife both, the ministry still exists today, and people like me can come and reap the benefits of his faithfulness and his prayerful life. And I can learn by his example, even though he's not here anymore, but things are still operating the same way they were when he was here. And it's been a huge positive in my life and in my faith and everyone who I've met here. And you meet people from all around the world, because it's such an international community. And you get to see the church throughout the entire globe. And then you all leave, and then you see how the ministry spreads throughout the entire world. And it's just kind of like we're all part of God's family, obviously. And then you get to see how the kingdom grows and develops throughout the world. And it gives you a perspective of how you're not in this alone. Like, the army of God is everywhere. And it's been very, very cool to see that come to life. There's a book called Go a Little Further by Mrs. Thomas, and she explains this all very, very well. It's such a good read. It's so encouraging. I would read it and then just feel like kind of giddy afterwards, and like wow, like all these God moments happen throughout it. And it's all because they're just so faithful and prayerful, and they are just on fire for what God has in store for them. And they love the Lord so much that this is what they want to do. And it's reminded me that it doesn't matter what God has for you. Like, we've all got different gifts and abilities, which is so amazing, because God can use his people in every aspect of life. I used to think, I don't want to be a doctor, so how am I going to be any use to society? That's so not true. And I know that now, because God needs people in his army to be everywhere. And it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you do it prayerfully and faithfully, like, God's going to use it. And then we just build his kingdom, which is the ultimate goal.
Amen to that. Just tell us a bit about your faith then. You were talking about prayer, you're talking about Jesus Christ, you're talking about the Bible, and your relationship with God. So what was your journey of faith? I mean, have you got from a Christian background? Is it a sort of a Paul on Damascus Road situation? What's your journey? Was it just what you always were going to do, or was there a dramatic moment that you can point to?
So I did grow up in a Christian home, and my parents met at Bible school. Not this Bible school, but one in Canada. And I always wanted to go to Bible school. That was always my plan throughout all my childhood, was university and Bible school. I thought I'd go to Bible school first, but then things came up along the way, and I went to university first. I got a degree in music and a degree in education. And then COVID happened. I thought, oh my goodness, I really hope the Bible school doesn't shut down, because you didn't know at that point. Things were shutting down all over the place. So, but my plan was to come to Bible school after university. And while I was at university, both my younger sisters came here to this site specifically as students. And so thankfully, the site did not shut down, and I came after university. But yeah, I was always involved in church, in youth group. Then when I was in university, I was a youth leader. I was involved in a worship team at my church. We went to summer camp growing up, like church camp. Um, Lots of my uncles are pastors. It's kind of just in the family, which I'm very, very thankful for. So I always had a personal relationship with Christ, but I knew I needed more time to focus on it in order to grow in it in a way that I knew I needed. So you learn things in church every week, and you learn things at youth, and you have Christian friends, but I just knew I needed more dedicated time to actually learn about the Bible. I knew the stories, but I couldn't maybe tell you like what book they happened in, or like specific details, or all the names of the people. So I knew the Bible, but I didn't know it as well as I wanted to. So I was actually scared that I would fall into the trap just when I get a job after university. So I prayed every day that God would just not put that desire in my heart, and that I would just keep the desire to come to Bible school. I knew I needed it for my personal relationship with Christ to be able to grow in the way I wanted it to. So I came here in the fall of 2022. So I've been here for almost 2 years, and yeah, it's the best decision I ever made. I've been growing in my relationship with Christ ever since, and relationships with friends and staff as well. Coming back, it's been really interesting to see it in a different lens and be on staff instead of a student, but seeing how you can still keep learning on staff. You don't have to be in a classroom to learn. You can learn in all different areas of being at Capernwray. So I've learned a lot.
Every day is a learning day, and it doesn't change as you get older. I'm still learning stuff today that it was amazing that I'm able to learn, because I just think that's so cool. So let's just come back to the archives just for a moment. How long a project could this be? I mean, you have an end purpose. You need to do so much to do what you've got to do, but how long could you spend just looking through the archives?
That's a good question. I mean, it's not like there's an endless amount of archives, but there are, I think, a quite decent amount. So I could spend a very long time, especially getting lost on the internet, going down bunny trails of information and collecting it all. I could be here for a very long time. I am only going to be here till the middle of October. That's when my uni course ends. So that's when I agreed with Capernwray, when I set it all up for when I would leave. But right now we have a few projects along the way, but things just keep coming up, and we've added a couple projects while I've been here. So we're going to have a vinyl mural up along the main corridor, because there's nothing really to tell the story of the ministry. So we're going to change that. We're going to put up a bunch of stories of different departments, different decades, different things that have happened throughout time since we're going to go back to the Martin family when they lived here. So it'll go back a couple hundred years. And we're just going to tell the story that God's written through the people who've been here since it started. And we're going to put up a display case to display a few artifacts, and we're going to rewrite the website so that it makes a bit more sense when you want to learn about the history of the website, because right now it's a little bit confusing on the website. We have a couple of things going on. Some social media. There's a history post every Thursday now that I've been working on. So a couple little things to keep coming up, and people keep responding to the Instagram posts and to our newsletter that we put out every week with different connections to history. So saying like their father came here in 1948, or they were a student here in the 50s or something like that. We've had someone email actually saying that her great aunt was the head chef here in the 1880s. She doesn't know anything about the ministry. She just happened to send an email, and I happened to find it somehow. It wasn't even addressed to me, but it got to me somehow. And so I've been talking to her, and she sent me some pictures of recipes that she has that they used here in the 1880s, which I would not have known about had she not emailed. And someone drove by last week. He was on his way down, had never been here before, but his mom came in 1946 because he's connected to the headmaster who was in charge here when the school was evacuated in the Second World War. And he quickly popped in just to see it because he had never been before. And he said he has pictures, so I'm hoping to get some of those from him. And so lots of coincidences or just like God moments really just keep happening. So there's a lot of information, and there's a lot that could be done with it. So I don't know. It could, if there's someone else who can do something at some point, then there'd be lots to do.
I love one of the things you said about how there's all these different people, but God's been working through them, and it's kind of, I suppose how I would describe it is that there's this interwoven story of all these people, at one sense, seemingly randomly just coming along and doing a bit of time, a holiday, a retreat, or perhaps being here for Bible college for a while or whatever. But actually, they all kind of interwove. And coming back to something earlier you also said, you realise just how big the army of God is, how big that family is. Mm-hmm. And I'm just finished reading Brother Andrew's book from Open Doors, and he talks about how he goes into a church in Ukraine or Czechoslovakia, and they said that there's Christians elsewhere. We thought we were on our own. And you can kind of understand that in 2024, you think, okay, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have emails and phone calls weren't really there. But I don't know that it's changed in some ways. I think we can forget that there's Christians in Canada and there's Christians in America. We know of it, but perhaps we don't necessarily know it because we're not meeting people. Like, I wouldn't have met you from Canada talking about Jesus Christ in a dining hall near Lancaster, and that's what I love about this.
Yeah, me too. And just getting that awareness that it is so worldwide, especially for most people who come at quite a young age, to be able to have that perspective when you do go home and kind of be thrown back into normal everyday life that you were living before you went to Bible school and kind of had your horizons broadened. Very, very useful for your personal relationship with Christ, but also just to tell people about it when you go home. And going home is difficult. When people leave here, it is very sad, and it is so hard to leave. And there's people constantly leaving. But when you get to know people in a place like this, you grow with them in a way that you don't grow with other people elsewhere. You grow in your relationship with Christ with them, which I think is a more intimate way to grow with people, because it's a spiritual way of growing rather than just like a friend from work or something like that, someone you met in school. Not that those aren't as great. It's just so different. And so when you grow spiritually that much with other people, and then you have to leave and go to different corners of the world, it is so painful. It's so sad, but it's also so beautiful. That's the way it's been happening for decades now. And so many people have gone through that horrible feeling of people leaving and then having to go back to your home and continue on with this new growth of love you've had for your personal relationship with Christ, for the Bible, for the kingdom, and the people that you met, and having to just press on your own at home. It's very difficult to do, and you have all these beautiful memories, and it's so difficult, but for a great purpose.
Coming back to memories, I mean, effectively, you're here at the moment because you are looking at the memories of Capernwray Hall. You're looking at the memories of before it was bought, before it was used in its current format as a much more Christian focused place. But those memories that interweaves into who we are, then actually, as you say, you go away from here, and you'll have memories that you can take with you, and memories which are really precious. So thank you for sharing some of your story with us today. If people want to find this website you've mentioned, how can people find out some of the stuff that you're doing?
So the website, I think it's just called capernwrayhall.org. But we have a few Instagram accounts. So one is called Capernwray Hall, one is called Capernwray Life, and the one that I've been posting on is Capernwray Hall. So every Thursday there is a post about the history. It's varying topics, and so it's different every week. And then Capernwray Life is more about daily life here at Capernwray. So throughout the school year, September till June, it's more student focused, so what student life is like. And then throughout the summer, it's more holidays, because we operate as a holiday center throughout the summer months. And it's also quite the variety on there as well. So if you are interested in coming for a holiday or as a Bible school student, you can get a little taste of what life here is like on there. And earlier I mentioned that most people who come for Bible school are a bit younger, but that's not a rule. It doesn't have to be that way. It's open to anyone over 18. So if you are a bit older and you are interested in coming, don't let that scare you. Please. It is open to absolutely everyone. And yeah, if you want to see more, it's on Instagram. And then we also have the website.
So I had to write this down because I kept on misspelling it. So it's capernwrayhall.org.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a funny way of spelling it. So it's Capernwray Hall, Capernwray.
Capernwrayhall.org. Thank you, Mackenzie, for your time.
Did you know Pure 24/7 Radio has a shop? Well, we do. You can buy merchandise while supporting the work that we do here. Simply head over to www.pure247radio.org/shop. That's www.pure247radio.org/shop.